Hello and welcome everyone to this first video on chess tips. This is the first of many, and I'm glad to include you in this first video. My name is Charles Galofre, and okay, let's get started. So for today's chess tip, what we're going to talk about is about attacking the uncastled king. And many times in a chess game, you see that your opponent just doesn't castle. He probably doesn't castle because, one, he doesn't think it's a wise move. He thinks it's a waste of time, or he just doesn't know how to castle. And so what we're going to do is that we're going to show you an example of how you could punish your opponents for not castling. So typically, when your opponent hasn't castled, you want to attack. Now remember that when you attack, you want to make sure you attack with a couple of pieces, at the very minimum 3 pieces, as opposed to just one piece like the queen or only a lonely rook. You need to checkmate your opponent's king. You're going to need more than one piece, and as a result, I would recommend a minimum of 3 pieces to attack, especially when they're uncastled. So in today's example, white responded with e4, black played e5, knight f3, developing his pieces, knight c6, bishop b5, threatening to capture the pawn on e5 after an eventual capture on c6, f5, counterattacking by attacking the pawn on e4, knight c3, defending that pawn, pawn takes, knight f6, developing his pieces, takes, queen takes, castles, very important, knight to d4, moving the same piece twice in the opening, which is typically a mistake. Now white captures on d4, pawn takes, b3, an interesting move, and now c6, attacking the bishop. So what would you play in this position? That is my question to you. Notice the opponent's king position in the center of the board, and also take notice that the bishop has been threatened on b5. The pawn on c6 is threatening to capture it. How would you continue? The player of the white piece is proceeded by playing rook to e1 check. He's threatening to capture the black king, and so as a result, he's gaining a valuable tempo by checking the king, forcing the king to make a decision to either go to either side of the board or to block check. The most natural move here is to block with bishop to e7, after which it's very instructive to see how white proceeds here. White, instead of moving his bishop, defending his piece because it's being threatened, he decides to defend by counterattacking, or by actually attacking the bishop on e7 by playing bishop to a3. Now he's threatening to capture that bishop, and so black defends by playing d6, interfering with that diagonal. And now, instead of white backing down once again by retreating this bishop, he decides to continue attacking, and he does this decisively by playing queen to h5 check. Now we're going to see an interesting tactical battle that ensues. Black proceeds with the most natural move, which is g6, interfering with that check. But he also had to take into consideration what would have happened if black would have just simply defended with the queen. And if this would have happened, then white could have smashed through by playing rook takes bishop, king takes, and now bishop takes d6. The idea is if the king captures the bishop, then the queen captures the queen on f7. So the only move is king to f6, and the game could have continued here by playing queen e5, king g6, bishop d3 check, king h6, bishop e7, an excellent move, queen to d5, trying to exchange queens, queen f4 check, g5 check, and after bishop to d3, black resigns, or would resign, because the threat is to play queen to h4 checkmate. So going back, after g6, which is the most natural move, how would you, being the player of the white pieces, continue here? The most resilient attacking move is to play queen to d5. It's a centralizing move, and it's also a very tactical move because white is now threatening to capture this pawn on d6. And because it's a pinned piece and the bishop is a pinned piece, it's tactically gonna be favorable for white. Notice that black cannot capture the queen because the bishop will capture the king on e8. Black now plays king to d8, unpinning his king and threatening to capture both the white queen and the white bishop. White now sacrifices his bishop on c6. And notice qualitatively, Even though white is down a bishop or whole piece in this chess game, qualitatively his pieces are attacking the king, and he has 3 pieces: the rook on e1, the queen on c6, and the bishop on a3 from the side of the board. When you have 3 pieces attacking the king, this is good enough for a winning attack. Typically it's said that, it's good enough to mate. So after rook to b8, white once again crashes through by playing rook takes bishop. Queen takes rook. Bishop takes pawn. Queen b7. Queen c5. Rook a8. Rook e1, bringing in the last piece into the attack. And after queen b6, white finished off the game by playing bishop c7 check, threatening the queen. Queen takes, and now queen to g5 check. And in this position, black resigned because he sees that after king to d7, this is his only move. White would continue by playing rook to e7 check, king c6, rook takes queen, king takes, queen to e5 check, after which he'll pick up the rook, and white is simply materially winning, and as a result has a winning decisive advantage.